It's the Art of Action Figures, bringing you a look at the s.h.figuarts Super Saiyan Son Gohan, the fighter who surpassed Goku. This is the all-new 3.0 version of Cell Saga Gohan from Dragon Ball Z, and I'm so excited to be looking at this figure. This is my absolute favorite look for Gohan, specifically with the cape and the Super Saiyan 1 hair. I don't know, something about this haircut, the pale yellow, the cape, and the purple outfit just really looks nice. I know some people were disappointed this release doesn't come with a Super Saiyan 2 head like the original 1.0 version of this design, but rest assured, I have no doubt that slightly battle damaged version of this figure with a Super Saiyan 2 head is coming at some point in the very near future. I'm glad to see them updating this particular look for Gohan. The 1.0 is one of the stronger 1.0s, I think, just due to the variety of heads and faces. It's definitely showing its age. I think it was the third figure in the line. Points the way to an updated Perfect Cell. Another milestone for this figure, it is, I believe, the first official soft goods for Dragon Ball s.h.figuarts, and I am so excited to see them embracing not only the cloth-wired cape, but sensibility about using plastic for the collar here. Towards the bottom of the box, we have all of your brand logos, holographic stickers, and consumer safety information, letting you know that this is an officially licensed, legally sanctioned, authentic s.h.figuarts figure. Bandai, Tamashii Nations, Dragon Ball Z, holographic Toei Animation sticker, holographic Tamashii Nations quality sticker, ages 15 and up, warning, choking hazard, small parts, not for children under 3 years. Designed by Tamashii Nations in Japan, Bandai Spirits, made in China. Product may differ from photo. Speaking of which, here's a photo of Gohan looking stoic, ready to watch his dad defeat Cell with his relaxed face, relaxed hair, and wearing his Piccolo cape. There is an asymmetric window cut out that follows the outline of his hair. Through that, we can see the figure and most of the accessories, and written on the window is s.h.figuarts Super Saiyan Son Gohan, the fighter who surpassed Goku. And how do you feel about these little subtitles that they're giving the figures? I know it's so that you can tell it apart from the other Super Saiyan Gohan figures, or it's even not specific enough to say Cell Saga Super Saiyan Gohan, so I think it's kind of fun little flavor text, infinite latent Super Saiyan, muscles raging with Super Saiyan blood. I think a number would have been a lot simpler, like the way Mafex numbers each of their figures. Probably too late, that ship has sailed. I guess this is okay as an alternative. I look forward to what other goofy subtitles they come up with. Now, through the window, we also see this lovely sort of magenta accent color. I thought usually they would use some color from the figure as the accent color, but I am stumped by this one. I don't know if it's like a highlight accent color on his clothes, maybe? I can't think of what else it would be though. And up on the top, we just have a little bit of window cutout, and the rest of this manga panel, blast, angry face. On the left-hand side, name of the figure on, again, more cutout window. Along the bottom, Battle Ready Gohan pose with, you guessed it, accent color, name of the figure. On the right, this is the side I like to display in sort of color spectrum order, and that is very satisfying to me. So you can see that this Gohan is in a standard size box, so that's cool. And then around the back, finally, we have the full array of product photos. some information about the s.h.figuarts brand, which I will not read the entirety of, distribution information, and barcode along the bottom. All right. I have not unboxed this figure yet, so I am super excited. Let's go ahead and if you're new here, welcome, and if not, welcome back. I've got trusty hobby knife. I am going to cut the tape very carefully along the right-hand side of the box. I will slide my blade under the flap, push towards the back of the box with the dull edge of the blade, and pop. And then I will do the same at the other end. Pop. We have a very nice, cleanly opened flap. On the inside, you can see the lovely accent color printed throughout, but we've also got some kind of interesting instructions this time on this inner flap regarding the cloak, which says, keep the cloak and figure out of contact for long periods of time. Also, if you move it too much, the core material may break. If the figure is wearing the cloak for a long period of time, I'm guessing they're worried about purple color transferring to the white. And then if you move it too much, the core material may break, I think is referring to the wire in the cloak. So if you bend that around and like fold it at a right angle, it will snap. And maybe something about its durability over time, we'll see. So let's go ahead and slide Gohan out, and we'll talk about his accessories. But before we do that, you can see just that lovely color printed throughout the entire inside of the box. I do think that might be the highlight color for his clothes. Now, taking a look at Gohan in the tray, we'll do just a quick rundown of the accessories. We have a total of 5 faces, which is awesome. However, not so awesome is the fact that none of them is a smiling face, and it's getting a little bit conspicuous at this point with Krillin, Earth's Strongest Man, Android Saga Yamcha that just came out, Boy from the Future Trunks, Latent Superpower Trunks, Piccolo, Proud Namekian. What's up with no smiling faces? Every time it stings a little bit, to the point where I kind of hope that they are just working on Smiling Faces of the Z Fighters DLC pack, but probably not. If third parties could jump on that, that would be pretty cool. What we do have is a neutral, grumpy looking face, a neutral, slightly less grumpy looking face, a really grumpy, grimacing face, a shouting, angry face, and a oh snap Super Saiyan 2 face. More and more these days they're including alternate hair pieces that are compatible with all of the same faces as the default hair. This one is a windswept hair similar to the GT Goku or I think the Dragon Ball Kid Goku, Trunks Boy from the Future, Legendary Super Saiyan Goku. Love that they are starting to include these action dynamic hair poses. We have a total of 5 pairs of hands, fists, flat open chop hands, martial arts posing hands, splayed open finger blasting hands, and then clenched open finger blasting hands. Finally, we have his Piccolo cape with the plastic collar and wired cloth cloak. I am very excited to try that out and see how it works. So let's go ahead and take him out of the box. Looking at Gohan out of the box, let's go ahead and talk about his details, top to bottom. I guess before we get into the details, I do want to point out 2 kind of quality concerns that I have with this figure. One is minor and aesthetic, and one is a little concerning and mechanical. Let's start with the aesthetic one because it's staring us in the face. Some of the parts, like the shoulder and the hands, just have a very almost iridescent, glossy finish. There's no like pearlescence to them, but they're just very, very shiny. And I'm not a person who is on every single Figuarts Dragon Ball release gonna complain that it doesn't have enough paint and doesn't have enough matte finish. Normally, my stance on paint is less is more, and I don't think this is necessarily a paint problem, more of a materials problem. I think maybe they just used a harder plastic than Superhero Ultimate Gohan, which you can see has a much more consistent flat finish on the arm. So yeah, that's kind of the minor aesthetic concern. The mechanical issue is something I have been seeing pop up online. When you try to rotate the leg swivel, be very careful that it's not twisting the peg that goes into the waist, because I've seen people shear that peg completely clean off the hip joint. I think there are like 2 or 3 compounding problems with the construction of these hips that is contributing to that. Joint going into the waist is a ball peg joint, and that just means that there's a ball and then a cylinder with smaller diameter than the ball, and the point where the ball transitions to a cylinder creates kind of a pinching in shape where shear stress can be concentrated if there's any amount being applied to that joint when you're trying to swivel the leg. Unfortunately, that is something I've noticed is there, especially on my copy's left leg for whatever reason. I've already broken out the silicone oil and applied some to the sockets for both of those joints, and this is still posing a bit of an issue. I think the fit on the left hip swivel is just a little too tight. The right one is pretty good now that I've oiled it, but the left one still has a little bit of like almost like skipping. Like if you ever had a CD with scratches on it and it was like skipping through the track and not playing smoothly, that's kind of the best way I can describe the way that this joint moves. You can see if I push it forward, it pushes back quite a lot, and that is not the joint working properly. That is the joint between the thigh and the waist twisting, like literally the plastic warping and bending. And that's, I think, part of the reason why some people have had issues with that peg shearing. It does move okay once you get it going, but just that initial like skip is no good, because that means that joint is twisting. I've already pulled this apart and looked, and I can see some stress on the peg. You can tell if it's stressed because the plastic starts to turn white. If I pop him apart at the torso and look into the waist, the smallest diameter part right there has a little bit of lighter stress mark on it than the parts around it. This little piece, that's the concern. You can see it's pretty thin. And so if that joint is skipping when articulating the leg swivel, that could be an issue. And then the second problem is the thigh swivels on my copy are very tight. And what that means is that when you go to swivel the thigh, you can see it's not actually swiveling. It is flexing the peg. And it's kind of moving around the ball. Like, that's maybe supposed to happen a little bit because it is a ball peg. But I don't think it should be happening that much. And so I think that's an additional source of stress on that peg. And combined all of that together, I think I'm a little bit nervous, honestly, moving this figure's legs. So we'll see when more people start to get the figure if the problems are widespread. Mine's still holding together so far, but I did have to put some shock oil on those joints, and I did notice some stress marks on the pegs when I was doing that, just from like normal swiveling the leg after I got him out of the box. Alright, the final concern I have is not so much a quality concern, it's more of a just preference thing. I'm not sure how I feel about the soft shirt material. I didn't really like the Beast Gohan figure that came with this, that had this setup. I don't really like the mushy feeling that it creates when moving the joints around. I've also noticed that it's very easy for it to misalign and get kind of stuck on itself. Like you can see how the belt has gone over the waist, and now when I push him back, it's like bowing in a weird way. You've got to make sure that everything's like tucked in properly. Similar kind of problem with the hips going out to the side. If you just try to articulate them the way you normally would, they're gonna cave into the waist piece, which is soft and flexes, but is not meant to be catching on the top of the leg like that. So you just have to be careful to like feed it under the waist, which I'm sure, again, is probably not good for that peg. I love the way that they have sculpted and colored the Super Saiyan 1 hair. It's sharp, it has some nice texture, the hair sculpt has some good volume, it doesn't look very flat from the side or anything like that. Yeah, it looks really good throughout. This has always been my favorite haircut for Gohan, kind of set him apart from having the same hair as other characters. I don't know, he always seems to like trade hairstyles with Yamcha for some reason. I also really love the color that they've gone with, the pale yellow with just a hint of darker yellow shading in those creases. Looks really good, really true to the source material where full power Super Saiyan hair had that pale yellow color. I think they've done a much better job with Gohan here than, say, full power Super Saiyan Goku with the banana yellow. And similarly, the previous incarnations of this Super Saiyan hair sculpt, like here we can see the 2.0 battle damaged Super Saiyan 1 hair has kind of the banana yellow, plus back then they did all this weird orange shading in the creases. From the side, looks a little flat, loses its shape in the front. Compared to the new one, there's a lot more volume on his bangs, which is a good thing. It's just kind of a different, maybe one drawing to the next. The hair isn't always completely identical, so it's good to have variety. I don't necessarily mind them playing around with Super Saiyan hair color and sculpt, because Toriyama and the animators did the same thing. So as far as like a very point in time specific look for a character, I'm glad that they went with the point in time specific hair color and hair sculpt. The face printing has gotten a little bit more precise, finer line work around the brow and under the eye. Eyes themselves have a little bit of, you can see curvature across the bottom. The pupils are a little bit smaller. They've put a dark outline around them to really just make them pop. They didn't do the shading on the inner ear, which, I don't know, it's kind of take it or leave it for me. Clothing is really, really well done. I like the purple, the shade of purple. I like it more than this more washed out shade that they gave the 2.0. This reminds me a lot more of the 1.0 event exclusive with the anime colors. And speaking of the 1.0 event exclusive Gohan, here on the left we have the 1.0 event exclusive Gohan. On the right, once again, the 2.0 not event exclusive version. And you can see the colors, like I was talking about, are a little bit closer as far as like saturation and hue on the two on the left. The one on the right is much more desaturated and a little bit more blue. The finish is, however, quite different. The event exclusive had almost a glossy look to it. A 3.0 here has a much more matte, flat finish, which looks fantastic, I think. Honestly, I think there's room for both. I don't have a problem too much one way or another, glossy or matte. What bothers me is if it's not consistent, like at the shoulder here. Again, here's another example of when they didn't have a problem doing that. One thing that's always puzzled me about the 1.0 is why did he spend so much time in the hyperbolic tanning bed? It's kind of the risky run when you ask for every figure to have shading. There's also a really cool progression to see maximizing articulation while preserving very on-model sculpts. 1.0 is definitely the simplest articulation setup. Yes, this happens as well. Very simple ball joint shoulders. A single ball joint in the torso, but with this kind of extending feature, which was always a little odd, but actually effective, if I'm honest. Probably more effective than the 2.0. Then you had the drop-down ball hinge hips, the double-jointed but no kneecap knees, ball joint ankles, sometimes single ball joint ankles even. On the smaller bodies, lots of single joint elbows. As a result of the articulation setup being simpler, there are fewer cuts, so the figure doesn't look as mechanical. One thing that always sticks out a little bit to me on this figure, he's just kind of gangly looking compared to 3.0, where Gohan just kind of has more of a full shape. The arms have gotten a little bit shorter, and the silhouette, especially along the torso down the leg, definitely holds its shape a little bit better on the 3.0. It's more of a straight line with a little indentation for the waist, versus the 1.0 has dip at the waist. Sometimes in Dragon Ball they would wear pants with a sort of diamond shape at the knee. I think Piccolo and Vegito are a couple that come to mind. Cloud from Final Fantasy VII is another good example of what I mean by diamond shaped knee, but that was kind of a feature of all of these 1.0 baggy pants figures until with the 2.0 they introduced a lot more cuts into the sculpt. He still has kind of a gangly look similar to the 1.0, but you can see he looks a little bit more like solid. Arms are still a little bit long. The hips, the 2.0 hips, have a lot of complexity to them, which is a little bit distracting visually. They do have a little bit better silhouette than the 1.0 legs. Also has a tendency to come off as like rounded ball shape, and I think that is what they're trying to combat with this sort of extended upper thigh that they've started doing. Compare that to the Krillin 3.0 figure, and you can see what I mean. Like, there's a very distinct, like, rounded ball shape at the hip there, more of a vertical silhouette, which I think is kind of more on model to the way that the pants are drawn. The 2.0 has really limited articulation in the torso, so this cut just really was not necessary. It introduced some weird problems. Like, visually it's very jarring, and it also means they had to paint this part skin tone while molding this in skin tone, and they don't match super well. With 3.0, they've moved away from that mid-torso cut. They've also removed the hip flaps. Now let's run through Gohan's articulation. Double ball joint between the head and the neck, and then a single ball between neck and torso. He doesn't look up as much as I want. That's kind of a common problem I have with Figuarts Dragon Ball, just the way they sculpt the backs of their heads. Doesn't let them look up a whole lot without using the torso. We'll talk about that in a moment. Looking down though, really nice. Past 45 degrees down, so that's great. The elbows are double hinged and they look pretty good. They get a great range of motion past 135 degrees. Biceps swivel, the shoulders swivel. There's a butterfly joint in there that we'll talk about last. The torso is interesting. There's a ball joint at the waist connecting to the torso, and then the top, the socket is on a hinge inside this inner torso part under this soft shirt. So it has a really nice seamless look, but it does work really well. Gets a bit gappy at the back, but I'll take it for over 45 degrees of ab crunch, and it may look like he's bending at the hips, but I did not bend him at the hips. This is just the soft waist and belt kind of flexing. Similarly, going back, gets pretty decent range. Let's see if I can actually get a little bit further than that. I think so. The problem is the belt is in some way attached to the shirt at the front, and so you cannot really pull it down to hide that gap. But all together, I mean, he can look up really well. Very easily looks inside his foot line, so that's awesome. The hips, despite being a little bit scary, do have a really good range of motion. You can easily get it past 90 degrees, even more if you want to compress the waist piece a little bit. Incredible range. Since the waist is soft plastic, it deforms out of the way, and you can really bring the hips forward 135 degrees almost, which is just a little scary using that swivel on the left leg. The knees are double hinge joints. They go back again past 135. Awesome. The legs don't really kick back much because everybody's favorite 3.0 feature makes a return, but I think it looks good and really strong forward back split. Also, people always wondered why the 2.0 needs those caps. If you don't have those caps, this is what it looks like from behind when you swivel the leg forward. 180 split isn't impossible to get pretty close to, so I'm happy with that. The ankle movement I am not so happy about. They only go down 30 degrees if I'm generous, and it's because the heel of the shoe runs into this ankle part of the shoe. It swivels around. It should be able to just slide up and down his ankle so that when it's time to move his foot down, it just shifts up a little bit. Yeah, not a ton of range in the ankle going down or up for that matter, and I think that it could be better. 30 degrees up, and then the toe hinge works really well. The shoulders can hinge all the way up to past a T pose, almost to a Y. The neck has a really good amount of tilt past 45 degrees, and it's just very effortless to put it anywhere you want, which is fantastic. Joint in the torso doesn't give him as much tilt side to side as it gets front to back, because the hinge is only facing forward backward, and so he only tilts to the side about 30 degrees, with the neck making up for that. And then, of course, because of the ball joint, it swivels all around. That joint feels a little bit tight. I'm gonna oil it real quick. Ankle pivot, if you use both swivels, can get past 45, so that's pretty cool. That means he can get all the way down to here with his feet flat. the thigh swivel I talked about being a little scary tight on this figure. Scary because of the problems I've seen with that inner joint getting sheared off, but they do work well enough when you get them going. It's very hard to get down into that joint, so I may need to actually go heat him up and pop the thigh out of the socket, which sounds risky in its own. I don't know what the heat will do to the softer material. So, yeah, if anybody knows the best way to get to these thigh swivel joints with a little bit of oil, let me know. The shoulder joints are 3.0 style, ball peg going down, ball peg going in. So to get the maximum range, you got to pull them out a little bit, and that lets him bring his arms way out in front. The inner joint is purple, so it doesn't stand out very much. And yeah, this works a heck of a lot better than whatever they did on Beast Gohan. But it's kind of similar. I think the difference is these shoulder pieces are just separate, but still soft. On Beast Gohan, they were connected to the shirt, and I think that gave them some trouble with actually moving past the shirt, because you were trying to bend both the shoulder and the shirt, and if his hair wasn't in the way, he can bring his arms up and in beside his head, which is good. Also let him bring the arms back behind the back, although not as much as going forward, but still very good. They're inside the straight 90-degree line there, so they look good as well. And what that means is you could do like really wind up for a punch, bracing himself. That looks phenomenal. Really good. Okay. The cape is in two pieces, this soft plastic collar, and then the cloth wired part is kind of pegged into the collar. It has a wire around the whole perimeter, so you can pretty easily get it into a more cape-like pose. I'm using this one as a guide, and I think that comes out all right. It's going to be hard to be as precise as this with cloth, especially like the folds in the back. I don't know, something about the cloth and the soft shirt together has formed some sort of new hazard with leaving the cape on the figure for a long time, which is a little bit disappointing because, you know, I would like to display him with the cape. It looks cool. You can maybe put like a, I don't know, something in between the two to keep them out of contact. The hands are a little on the shiny side, similar to the shoulder. It's especially easy to tell on these like open blasting hands. Full power Super Saiyan Goku, encouraging him to go save the world so he can become a scholar. The relative height between these two works really well for me. They've got Gohan's eye level just above Goku's belt, which is about right, I think. And while we have Piccolo here, let's go ahead and bring him into a little bit of a taller character. And you can see I've added a wired cloth cape to Piccolo the Proud Namekian in exactly the same setup that they did for Gohan here. Best of both worlds. You get the precision, sharpness of the sculpted collar, and then the posability of the flowing cape. So I'm really happy with that. I think what sold me on wired cloth capes was when Imperfect Cell was released, I was trying to pose him fighting against Piccolo, and I think Piccolo is wearing his cape during that fight, and I was trying to do fighting poses with Piccolo's cape, and it just doesn't work at all for that. So this was where I broke down and got a cloth wire cape. I can have suddenly a gust of wind coming through, and with Gohan even, swapping the head is pretty straightforward. The default head pops off easily, and the windswept hair, you just simply remove the bangs. The seam is really well integrated into the sculpt, so you can't even tell it's there when it's fully attached, so that's awesome. The bangs come off along with the face, and then the face plugs up into the bangs. It is a little bit hard to push the head onto the neck peg when he's wearing the cape, but does eventually go on. The plastic part for the collar is a softer plastic, kind of like the shirt, so that works out pretty well. As far as like giving you a little bit of flexibility when posing the neck, you can kind of rotate the collar around and it'll bend a little bit to kind of form fit to his torso. Now when the capes are billowing, I like to try to put a little air pocket into the billowy part to give it a little bit of lift. Ready to walk into battle with Cell. Goku thinking, wow, these 11-year-olds grow up so fast. I'm such a good dad. And Piccolo saying, no, you're not. I think this is where the Goku is a bad dad meme is really in full effect. Sending Gohan into battle with Cell. Made a little bit worse by the fact that he gives Cell a Senzu Bean before the fight so that it's fair. Not his brightest moment. It's good we've got Piccolo to teach Goku a lesson after this particular idea. Mr. Piccolo's taught him well. Capes are for looking cool before the battle. Time for fighting, time to throw the cape and have it hit the ground with a heavy thud. This is on a just kind of regular flight stand. The plastic collar connecting to the cloth is a good place to hook the waist clip of a flight stand into, which is what I've done here. And having it in the dark hides most of the scaffolding. You can see that there. You can also have it pretty effectively like strewn across the ground back here, so that's pretty cool. You can't really do that with a hard plastic cape. Not quite the same effect. So that's another cool feature of the cloth cape. And here's where Gohan really comes into his own. The action poses, especially the big sweeping kicks, the range of motion on the hip really supports being able to kick the leg very, very far forward, kicking Cell in the face. Don't forget the all-important charging Kamehameha pose. looks really good from all angles. And then we have this excellent face. This face, it's a little odd that this face has scratch marks when the rest of the body is clean, but I have a theory. I think that a battle-damaged Super Saiyan 2 figure is coming, and that this face is a bit of pre-DLC for that figure. One cool thing is if you have the 2.0 Super Saiyan 2, it'll definitely hold things down until a 3.0 Super Saiyan 2 figure comes out. You can sticky tack that on there to give the effect like he's snatched the senzu beans back from Cell. But yeah, it doesn't fit straight away. They've really come a long way since 2009, 10, somewhere in there. The very, very previous, almost 30 years old Super Battle Collection. But yeah, I really like to see the progression like this. 3 eras of Gohan in the purple gi. On the left, it's Kid era Gohan, and on the right, Superhero Ultimate Gohan. The Kid era Gohan definitely could use an update as far as I'm concerned. I think this 2.0 Kid body is just really awkward looking. It looks okay in some poses, but the kind of gigantic head and the stubby arms, and here we have Teen Goku. Nope, that's cursed. And to close things out, here we have an array of 3.0 bodies in various scales. From left to right, GT Kid Goku, Earth's Strongest Man Krillin, Gohan, the fighter who surpassed Goku, Superhero Ultimate Gohan, and Trunks, the boy from the future. Model looking nicely finished. A couple little blemish points visually, and that one concerning spot at the hips. We'll see if that becomes more of a problem over time. I hope not, because otherwise it's an outstanding figure. And while the build quality is like not as flawless as the reissue Boy from the Future Trunks and even Krillin Earth's Strongest Man, it's probably more akin to Superhero Ultimate Gohan. He's got a bit of squeak, and I think it works okay here because he's bigger, and so the pegs are larger and less likely to twist and turn and tear. So we'll see if that becomes an issue. Otherwise, this is an outstanding figure, an outstanding update to my favorite look for Gohan. I hope you've enjoyed this look at the s.h.figuarts Super Saiyan Son Gohan, the fighter who surpassed Goku. This has been the Art of Action Figures. I'll see you in the next one.